Good morning. Okay, so I think we're going to jump in. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning at our weekly Easy Bills demo. We have been running them throughout the summer, but they have been a little bit quieter. So it feels like today's the first day that people are really sort of back to it. Kids are back at school. My son started creche today. So it's a bit of a big and exciting day for me personally. And looks like everyone's here and ready to go. So my name's Elise and I'm the partner manager here at Easy Bills. I've been working here for exactly 2 years and I really love the piece of software, and I actually have a background in education, and one of the reasons that I love doing what I do is I feel like I really have the opportunity just to teach about the software, help explain different features, and help you find solutions to pain points that you are having in your own business or in your clients' businesses. So I'm going to run through the software today, but I always want to make it as interactive as possible. So please pop your questions in the chat as we go, and I'm happy to answer them. And I also have been doing something which has been quite popular recently, which is at the end of the session, I'm happy to stay behind with one of the teams or one of the people who have joined the call today to help do a one-on-one complimentary Easy Bill setup session. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can write a message in the chat, and if anyone's interested, that'll be first in, best dressed. Okay, so let's get started. So as you can see on my screen, I'm just going to mention it in passing. I don't know if we've got any accountants or bookkeepers in the room today, but this is basically our HQ partner or multi-entity dashboard. And this is basically what we can activate in a number of different cases. So the first case is for bookkeepers and accountants. You can bring all of your companies onto the dashboard, toggle back and forth between the companies, purchase a subscription for all of the companies on your dashboard, and see things like the usage of the different clients, as well as set up users so that different staff members who are part of the bookkeeping or accounting business can log in. The other way that we can use this is if you have, I guess, sort of two subcategories. One would be a multi-entity business. So if you've got a business, but you've got 5 different Xero files to manage different aspects of the business or different locations of the business, we can set up, again, this multi-company dashboard, and you can purchase a subscription for all of your different entities. Or if you've got multiple businesses that you run or manage or work for, you can also use this. Each account is a completely separate Easy Bills account. So the whether it be clients or managers at that site, whatever it may be, can log in and out of the individual account without having access to any of your HQ dashboard or functionality associated with it. But you will have sort of this bigger view of everything that's going on. So we'll jump into one of the client accounts, and we will get into it. So this is basically what an Easy Bills client or company account looks like. And there's 3 main ways of getting documents from the outside world through to your accounting software using Easy Bills. So the first one is drag and drop. The second is the email address, and the third is a mobile app. So if you've got an invoice that you'd like to send through drag and drop, you can just drag and drop it into this gray box, and Easy Bills processes documents by default as supplier invoices. So if you've got different types of documents that you'd like to process through, if you click on this button and you look at this bottom row, you can see all of the different types of documents that we process. So if you've got a credit note, for example, you can drop it in the credit note box. If you've got a sale invoice, you can drop it in the sale invoice, purchase order, e-invoice, etc., etc. The boxes at the top are for custom workflows, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about approvals. But those are basically workflows that you set up in the workflow tab that you can then drag and drop into as well, as opposed to having to send documents to those workflows through unique email addresses, which was the way that you used to have to do them. So that's the drag and drop. There's a dedicated email address, which is probably the most popular way that people send documents through to EasyBills. So when you create an EasyBills account, you create a username for the account, and that username forms the basis of the email address. So in this case, my username is your company, and therefore my email address is yourcompany@easybills1.com. All I've got to do if I want to send through a document that way is open up a regular email address, type in your company at easybills1.com, attach as many supplier invoices as I like, and just hit send, and then they will be sent through automatically. Now, it's not just you that can send documents through that way. We've got lots of clients that give this email address out to their suppliers, for example, and their suppliers can send through the bills automatically from the supplier straight through to EasyBills, direct into draft in your Xero file without the bookkeeper or accountant or business owner needing to even see the document. Now, the third way of getting documents through to EasyBills is using our mobile app. So you can download our mobile app from either the App Store or from Google Play. It's just called EasyBills with our logo. Shouldn't be hard to find. And that's really what we would recommend for physical documents. So if you've got petrol receipts or receipts from Coles or anything else that's being purchased out and about where you've got a physical receipt, we recommend taking a photo with our app and sending it through to EasyBills. Now, in order to connect your mobile app through to your EasyBills account, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One is through your username and password. So you can use the same username and password that you use to create your EasyBills account to log into the mobile app. And the other way is if you go into the settings menu, there's this mobile passcode section and you'll see a QR code. So on the app, you'll have the option to log in through QR code. If you scan this QR code, you'll be able to log in and connect your mobile app to your EasyBills account. Now, if you've got other people that you want to be able to send documents through the mobile app, but you don't necessarily want to give them access to your EasyBills dashboard or any other backend information that you might be doing, what you want to do is click on this link, email me the EasyBills mobile how-to, and what will happen there is you will get an email sent to your email address or the email address associated with the EasyBills account that has a PDF attached to it with instructions of how to download the mobile app, how to use the mobile app, and it will also have an image of this QR code. So whoever's got that PDF will be able to scan the image of the QR code, link their EasyBills app to your EasyBills website, backend dashboard, and then they can send through documents. Now, we don't have a limit on the number of people that can be sending through documents. So if you are a logistics company and you've got 300 truck drivers out on the road that are paying for fuel and sending through receipts, that's not a problem. All of those 300 truck drivers can be downloading the app and sending through receipts all at the same time. Now, there is a setting on the app called Review Receipts that we recommend that people use when they're using the app. And basically what that does is after the person scans the receipt, it basically comes up with a pop-up with the details of what EasyBills has pulled through our OCR technology from the document and what it will be submitting to us. And that way, if there are any issues, the person themselves can make the adjustments before they send it through so that you know once the data comes to you, the person who's taken the photo has already taken a quick look at it and it should be good to go by the time it comes into the system. Any questions so far? Okay, great. So just as a side note, I will send the recording. I will do my best to send the recording of this demo to you at some point in the next few days. So if there is anything here that you want to go back and check, you will have access to this later on as well. Okay, so we spoke when we were talking about drag and drop about the different types of documents that EasyBills processes. So if you don't want to process them through drag and drop, you can also process them through these unique upload aliases. And just like those different lists of documents that we saw in the gray box, we've got the same thing under upload alias here. Again, we're in the settings, account settings menu. And if you like to email a different type of document through to EasyBills instead of dragging and dropping, you can use these unique email address. So if you've got a sale invoice, for example, you can email it to yourcompany.sale@easybills1.com. Xero will recognize it as a sale invoice and process it accordingly. Question, can you see who uploaded a receipt in the app so you can tag them for the tracking report in Xero? It's a good question. So you can't see it by default, but there is an option in the app to put a note, and they can put a note in with their name or their staff ID or whatever you would like them to put in order to identify themselves. Okay, cool. So the next type of document we're going to talk about, which are quite commonly used, are spend money transactions and employee expense claims. So in order to process those types of documents, we've got to set up, again, unique email addresses in order to do that. So now we're going to jump to the approval and expenses tab, and we've got this list of users, approvers here on this page. So in order to set this up, we click on Add Approver, and we're going to do spend money transactions first. So for a spend money transaction, you want to put in this name column something that will identify the credit card. So it could be the person who uses the credit card, it could be the business location that uses the credit card, or anything else associated with the credit card. So let's assume that this is for the Caulfield location of the business. So we're going to write Caulfield there. We're going to put in an approver email. Now we'll see in a minute that this document doesn't actually have to be approved, but the software does ask for an approver email, and this would be a real person's email address. So I've just created an email address just so I don't have to log into my real email during demos. But if you're doing it, this would be a real person's email address. Now for the spend money transactions, this business bank account column is probably the most important piece of information that you need to do in order for these transactions to process correctly. So what you want to put in here are the last 4 digits in your business bank account that you would like the credit card statement to reconcile with, or you'd like the spend money transaction to reconcile with. So I've got a demo Xero company. The last 4 digits of my business bank account are 5678. So we're going to jump back to EasyBills and we're going to put in 5678. We're going to leave the My Expenses tab blank, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. We'll assume that this doesn't need to be approved, so we'll bypass approval and click on Save Approver. Now what happens here is we now have a unique upload email address, which is yourcompany.caulfield@easybills1.com. So if I had spent some money on a credit card that I wanted to reconcile with business bank account 5678 and have it come through as a spend money transaction instead of an employee expense claim, then I can send it to yourcompany.caulfield@easybills1.com, and it'll come through as a spend money transaction. Now, if I wanted to put that same document through the app, On the app, there is a section that says alias name. And in that alias name, I can type the word Caulfield because that's what I have in this name field. And that will process in the same way as the upload email address. Employee expense claims, quite similar. So we're going to click on add approver, and we're going to put the employee's name who will be spending money on their own credit card. So let's call the employee Joe. And again, we've got the approver email address. Now for the employee expense claims, we're going to skip the business bank account, but we're going to tick the My Expenses box. And what happens when we tick the My Expenses box is it sets up the employee as a supplier. So let's say Joe has gone out and bought some snacks for the start of year party. When she submits the claim this way, she'll be set up as a supplier. And when you go to pay your other suppliers at the end of the fortnight or the month, whatever your process is, you will also be able to reimburse Joe for the money she spent. Maybe this expense does need to be approved, so we'll leave that bypass approval box blank. And again, click on Save Approver. And now we've got, again, a new upload email address. So again, if Joe's got her receipt for the snacks for the beginning of year party, she can either email the receipt to yourcompany.joe@easybills1.com, or she can just put the word Joe in the app and it'll process in the same way. Okay, I've got another question. If a receipt we have sent through has bounced back because it's in the wrong format, can we change the email address it gets bounced back to? At the moment it goes, yeah. So there is a place in the app for notifications. So what you want to do is just go into advanced options. And there's a section here about notifications, and there's a section for your notification email. And so if you want the notifications to come to you instead of your boss or whatever, you can just change that notification email to your email address, and then you'll get all the notifications about bounce backs, issues, etc. Okay. Any other questions about the spend money? Thanks. Okay. Any other questions about the spend money transactions or employee expense claims? Okay. Obviously, if anything comes up, feel free to ask as we go. Okay. So we are going to move into approvals now. And we've got a number of different ways of using approvals in EasyBills. And this is one of the reasons that I really like the piece of software, because a lot of people are using one piece of software for data extraction and another piece of software for approvals. And with EasyBills, you can really do 2-in-1, or really 3-in-1. Sometimes people are using a different piece of software for expense claims as well. So you can really, really package all of those 3 pieces into one piece of software to really minimize the pieces of tech that you need, as well as to streamline the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a more basic approval, and then we'll jump into the workflow and I'll mention how to do some of the more complex approvals. If you do need some of the more complex approvals, our team is here and available to help you set them up and make sure they're working properly, because it can be a little bit tricky to get set up, but we find once they're working, they work really, really well. Okay, so for basic approval, so this would basically be a use case where you've got one person that needs to approve every single document that goes through EasyBills. So let's say you're a cafe, you've got one cafe manager, and that person needs to approve everything that comes through. So again, we're in settings and approval and expenses. We're going to tick on enable approval workflow, choose whether we want a single level approval or a 2-level approval. We'll assume single level approval for now, and then we will pop in the default approver email, which again is my sort of approval email address for demos, but you would put in a real person's email address there and then click on Save Settings. It's really important that whenever you make any changes, you do click on the save settings because the app unfortunately doesn't autosave. So you click on that, hit save settings, and then you've basically set up approvals so that any document that comes through will need to be approved. So I'm going to run one for you so you can see the whole workflow. And while that's processing, I'll mention a couple other things. So we will jump back to our dashboard and we will grab a Bunnings invoice. They're my favorite. And let that process. Okay. So while that's processing, we're going to jump to the workflow tab and I'll just show you a little bit about some of the more complex approvals and just mention some other things. So with our workflows, we're really trying to create a situation that we are automating as much of the accounts payable process as possible. So it's impossible in a half hour, 45-minute demo to sort of go through all of the different workflow tasks that we do, but we do a lot. So we can do things like account code splitting. So for example, if you've got a water bill and 50% of it is personal and 50% of it is business, we can set up a workflow to automate that. We can set up a workflow to automate price checking. So if you get a quote from your supplier at the beginning of the year, you can put that through Easy Bills, and then every time you get an invoice, you can push it through to check. So there's lots and lots that we do. You can either read through the documentation on our website, or if you're sort of got specific pain points in your business, get in touch with us and we'll help you come up with a solution. For now, I'll just go through the approvals one in a little bit more detail because that's probably the most commonly used one. So we can do up to 5 levels of approval with Easy Bills, and at each level of approval, we can set approval rules to determine how the document goes through and who it gets sent to. So for each level of approval, so this is just a single level approval because that's what I'm demoing right now, but for each level of approval, there will be a submit approval button as part of the workflow. And once you click on that, you'll have a series of approval rules that turn up. Now you'll see there's approval rules based on supplier, there's approval rules based on amount, there's approval rules based on, whether it's a recurring supplier or a new supplier, based on who approved the document in the past. So there's all sorts of different rules, and these rules all work in conjunction with each other. So just for the demo's sake, I've just created a few beforehand. So for example, I've written if the supplier is Coles, then Elise at EasyDoc approves it. And if it's Woolworths, then Joe at EasyDoc approves it. So that would be a rule based on suppliers. I've written one based on amount. So if the invoice amount is is more than $1,000, then Michelle at EasyDoc will approve it. And if it's recurring, then don't send for approval. So for example, if you've got a rent bill that for more than 3 months, it's the same bill with the same amount. After the first 3 times, that bill will no longer need approval. So like I mentioned, you can set as many of these rules as you like for up to 5 levels of approval. And you can also have as many of these workflows as you like. So I was working with a government funded not-for-profit, and they had about 20 staff, and each staff person had a different set of approvers that they needed to send their stuff through. And so I worked with this client to set up 20 different approval workflows. So, we can, like I said, get down to sort of very granular depending on the needs of your business. Okay, so if we jump back to the dashboard. And we can see that is still in progress, which is fine. Okay, so while that's processing, I will just mention a couple other things. So in the account settings menu, there's a section here for ABN and company name. I just recommend filling that out just as a kind of helpful tip. And really all that does is it helps the software not get confused between your business and the supplier's business. So if you put your details there, it'll know who you are or who your client is, and it won't get you confused with the supplier. Now moving down the page, there's some settings here that I also like to mention. So auto separate, which is auto ticked, basically automatically separates invoices. So people ask me all the time, what happens if I've got a stack of 20 invoices in one PDF? With this auto separate feature, EasyBills will separate that into 20 different invoices and process it through to your accounting software appropriately. The archive document when workflow completes is basically when something has gone through, we'll delete it from being visible from your dashboard, and it will never delete it from our system. We always keep that data for 7 years, but you won't be able to see it on the dashboard. Invoice headers only is a setting where we don't give you the line item details. So by default, everything processed through EasyBills has line item details. But if for whatever reason you don't want those line item details, you can tick that box and you'll just get the tax and the total. And this check for duplicates, which is one of my favorite settings, where basically you can put that on, and if EasyBills sees that there's already an invoice in your accounting software with the same supplier and the same invoice number, it'll come back with a duplicate detected and ask you if you still want to process it. Okay, so we can see that that is now in the process of sending me an email for approval, and it should be there momentarily. Generally speaking, the documents only take between about 30 seconds to a minute to process, but my internet has been a little bit slow this morning, so I apologize about that. But when you are processing documents, you can process as many as you like at a time. You definitely don't have to wait for one document to finish processing in order to start processing the next one. So we can see now that the tile has turned gray, and you can see when you mouse over it, it's waiting email approval for EasyBills approval at gmail.com. And this is really helpful, especially if you've got multiple levels of approval. It'll tell you who is meant to be approving the document next if it does get stuck somewhere along the line. So I can go into my email. I can see that I've got a new email, and this is what the approval emails look like. EasyBills email approval, it'll be the name of your company. So my username is your company. You can open it. You can see that it's a supplier bill waiting approval. You can download it if you want to look at all the details. You've got the basic information pulled, and then you've got a couple of options. You can approve, reject, or modify. And if you click on the modify button, it will give you the option of approving multiple documents at once. So like you saw in my email, there was just a lot of email addresses of documents and a lot of emails waiting for documents that are waiting approval. So instead of having to go through and open up all those documents, you can just hit this modify button. You'll get this dashboard that we've built, and then you can just go through and approve as many documents as you like in one go. Now in this modify screen, there's a few different things you can do. So you can obviously approve or reject the document. You can say it's not for me. So if it was sent to you in error, you can either say that you know who's meant to be the approver and forward it directly to them, or you can say you don't know who the approver is, and then it will sort of go back to the dashboard for the administrator to sort out. You can set account codes, and so if you set account codes here, that will be at a global level. And then if you click here on show table, you'll be able to set item codes and account codes at a line item level to make sure that that is also ready before it goes through. So I know in some big organizations, people have told me that the accountant or bookkeeper doesn't necessarily know all the GL coding, but it's the line managers, for example, that know how to do their own coding. So that would be a great example where you could send this to the line managers. They can see this screen, they can put in the coding and then approve it and send it through. So we'll approve that. And then if we had more documents waiting approval, it would open the map automatically. But as you can see, all of the other documents in the queue are already green, which means that they've already been approved. Okay, so we will jump back to our dashboard, take another few seconds, and we will let that process. Any questions while we're waiting? Okay, so while we're waiting, I'm just going to mention our apps page. Some of this I have covered earlier, but just always like to point it out just so you can have a bit of a high-level overview of what it is. So this page is divided into two different sections. There's the top section, which is what I would call basically features that are sort of baked into our product. And the bottom section are actual apps that we integrate with. So I'd say the most popular ones are Simpro, Deer, and Ascora. So if your business is using any of those pieces of software, we have direct integrations with them, in addition to the major pieces of small business accounting software. And as I mentioned, the apps at the top are more about features that are baked into the product. So if you click on each one of them, there's a little description at the bottom that'll tell you what to do and how to do it. And again, we can always help with any of this. A couple that I'm going to mention that people seem really excited about. One is a statement reconciliation feature. So that would be a case where your supplier sends you a statement and you want to figure out what the status of each of those invoices are. You can send through the statement to the email address, which is yourcompany.app.sr@easybills1.com. And you will get a report saying this document, this invoice is missing, this invoice is paid, this invoice is awaiting payment, etc., etc. And we've recently built the same thing with remittance advices as well. We can convert bank statements to CSVs. I mentioned the price check report before, where we can check against supplier prices, and all sorts of other reports about who's approved documents, etc., etc. So we'll jump back to our dashboard now. We can see that the tile has turned dark green, which means that it's processed through to the accounting software successfully. We can see the basic information on the tile that's been extracted. And we also have a doc ID. So I guess this is, a request from our support team. If you do ever have an issue and a document doesn't process through correctly and you're contacting our support team, just give them the doc ID, which is this number generated at the bottom of the tile. It'll make it much easier for them to help figure out what the problem is and come to a solution. Otherwise, they will probably just email you and say, what's the doc ID? Now we can see on the tile, we have a 0 button. We just click on that 0 button and it will take us through to the document that has just come through in Xero. This is all live and has been done in the past couple of minutes while we have been speaking. So a few things I just want to point out. One is that we always include a copy of the document with the entry in Xero. And if you're using approvals, if you download the document, you'll be able to see in the top left-hand corner, we've got a virtual watermark. So now we have not only the person's email address that approved the document, but we also have the exact date and time that that document was approved. So that's really helpful for auditing purposes later on, or if management needs to go back and figure out how certain things got through or when they were approved in terms of a project management timeline. That information is all there and available. Now, as I mentioned, all of our documents have line item coding. So we pull items at a line item level. We do automated GL coding, and we also do automated tax coding. So if you've got an invoice, for example, maybe in the hospitality industry where some of your items have tax and some of them don't, that will come through here and the tax will be calculated appropriately. Our GL coding is done in an automated way based on machine learning, based on how things have been coded in the past. So in this case, all of these items have been coded as light, power, and heating in the past, and therefore they've coded as light, power, and heating again this time. If it's a new zero file or things haven't coded properly for whatever reason, there's a couple of things we can do. One is you can modify the GL code in this stage. So in draft, let's say it's not light, power, and heating, it's actually cost of goods sold because we're reselling the industrial gas trade flame. We can change that, approve it, and save it. And then if we pop back into the EasyBills dashboard, in the settings menu, in the account settings tab, we've got this big blue refresh learn button. And what that does is it tells EasyBills to go into your accounting software, find out what has been changed and remember it for future. So if we were to hit that refresh learn button, then it will remember that this item is actually cost of goods sold, and it will code that way in the future. If you've got a default code for a certain supplier, so let's say everything coming from Bunnings is cost of goods sold, you can set that in your supplier contacts, set the default GL code, and EasyBills will pick that up in that way. We do pull due dates if they're available on the invoice. In this case, there was no due date on the invoice, so it just pulled the due date that, it just pulled the due date, which was the same date that the document was issued. But again, if you've got default terms, so if your default terms with Bunnings Trade are 60 days, you can put that in your contact as well, and EasyBills will pick that up as well. We can also extract a little bit of tracking detail. So for example, this word tools was extracted straight from the invoice. So there's a section on the invoice that said customer job number, and I put a tracking code as customer job number, and therefore that word tools was extracted. So that is often used, for example, if you've got different locations and you need to know which location the goods were delivered to, you could have the word location, for example, set up in the tracking in EasyBills, and then in that reference it would say Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, etc. Questions about any of this? Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to jump back to the app, and I think we'll probably leave it at that. So just a couple of things before I conclude. So if you haven't yet set up a free trial, we do free 30-day trials. We don't ask for any credit card details. You can go to our website, easybills.com. And there's a button that says sign up for a 30-day free trial. You just want to click on that and you can put in the details, and you'll be able to register a new account straight away and have a play with it. We do try to reach out to everyone who's set up a free trial, but you're also welcome to get in touch with us. So I will make sure our details are in the chat. So if you want to reach out to our support team, it's support@easydoc.com. And if you've got sort of account setup, account management type questions, welcome to reach out to me directly at elise@easydoc.com. Happy to answer your questions, and if required, depending on the circumstances, set up a screen share as well. Do you offer Simpro-based webinars? Good question. So we do have recorded Simpro webinars that we've done in the past that I'm happy to send through to you. and I'm also happy to set you up with my colleague who sort of specializes in our SimPro integration, and he can set up a one-on-one webinar. We don't have, I guess, enough people using it yet to sort of do public webinars, but we can definitely set up a one-on-one. So I'm happy to do that for you, Rhiannon. I will make a connection straight after this webinar with my colleague, and you can do SimPro. And I guess just a side note, sort of, I guess if anybody's using SimPro or any of the other integrations, often what we recommend is setting up 2 EasyBills account that you can sort of set up under one subscription. So you set up one, you sort of set up the other one kind of nestled underneath, and then you can purchase one plan for the SimPro or Deer or whatever, and the Xero. And then depending on which type of expense it is, if it's a project expense, you send it through the SimPro workflow. And if it's an overhead expense, you send it through the Xero workflow. So that's an option as well. But my colleague would be happy to help you dive into the SimPro webinar a little bit more. Okay. Any final questions before we wrap up? Okay. And anyone interested in staying behind for a bit of a custom account setup? Do you have tutorial videos? Yes, great question. On our website, we've got lots. So if you just go to our website to learn and support, I find the Xero user guide is the best place to start. They've actually just been redone, so the format and layout are a little bit easier to navigate, but that's probably where you would start. Some of it is video, some of it is articles with screenshots, but there's a lot of content there. We also have a YouTube channel if you prefer sort of longer videos. So the videos here are sort of shorter videos. The content on the YouTube page is sort of longer videos. So the kind of webinars that we've given in the past, an hour just focusing on approvals, an hour just focusing on the mobile app, an hour just focusing on the SimPro integration, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're looking for a way to really learn sort of in depth about a specific feature set, then I would recommend our YouTube channel as well. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I think we will leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming. And like I said, we're here and available, so test it out, and then we will hopefully be in touch. Have a great day, everyone. Speak to you soon.